It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to order on this 6th day of September. And we do have a quorum. Do we have anybody here to make comments that's not related to the agenda items?
No, ma'am. Didn't get any forms.
Okay. Item number 3, consideration and possible action on appointing a vice chair for the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Madam Chairman, Zoning Board of Adjustment. So just a little bit of background information. On the previous meeting, the Board of Adjustment appointed a chairwoman, which is you, Connie. And so now we need to appoint the vice chairman from one of the members. You can either elect a member here tonight or a member not present.
Well, not sure if I could contact a member directly. I asked you to contact Paul to see if he was willing to serve as vice chair.
I am.
Okay. So I,
Yes, second the motion.
Oh, yeah. So you
So
have to do it. All I have to do is do a motion and
Okay.
then a second if someone else will second.
okay, well, I move we approve Paul Stankiewicz as vice chair.
I second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, item number 4, conduct a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comments and testimony regarding a zoning variance request submitted to the City of Navasota by MKV Properties, LLC, for the property located along 303 North Jones Avenue in Navasota, Grimes County, Texas, 77868, parcel ID R26380. The variance request to construct a carport addition encroaching within the 25-foot front setback and side setback requirements as prescribed in Article 6, R-1B, medium-density single-dwelling unit, quarter-acre residential district. The property affected is legally described as McNair, Block 10, Lot 9, 10, 8, and S/2.
And we need to open that public hearing with the time slot.
6:02.
All right. Madam Chairman, Zoning Board of Adjustment, so just to give a little bit of background on this request, MKV Properties LLC submitted this variance application request for 303 North Jones. 303 North Jones is currently undergoing a pretty significant remodel project. During the course of the inspections, actually our building inspector was out there doing an inspection one day and he noticed there was another minor addition of this carport going on. It wasn't reflected on the drawings that we have for the existing remodel project, so we notified the property owner and said, hey, you know, this addition of the carport needs to get a permit, or you need to give us additional plans. And it was already halfway up by the time we got to that inspection the next time, or that time I should say. So we informed them of all the various options they have, and they requested to see if they could apply for a variance to encroach within the front setbacks. And that's really the request tonight, is because of the way the home is oriented. You know, normally if it didn't encroach in a setback, the way we treat this is, hey, well, just get us all the drawings, we'll review to make sure that it's all to code, and we'll go from there. But since the home is kind of at an angle, it causes this to be out further towards the street. And so what's being requested tonight is an encroachment of basically 25 feet in the front. I mean, the front post is a foot within the property line, and then on the side, it's 8 feet, where it should be 12 and a half. Marissa and Tanya are here tonight to represent this application if you'll have any questions, but that's really the biggest part of it is if the variance is approved, then of course staff will work with the property owner to make sure that all the proper inspections are conducted and really taking a look at that carport in detail.
Were there directions given to the property owner at the time by the home inspector? Did he have to cease and desist any building, or were they allowed to proceed forward?
Yeah, I mean, we did communicate to the owner. He said, hey, just, you know, most of it's already done. Just try to not complete it completely, because you always run the risk, right, of, if the variance is not approved, then there's a high likelihood that, you know, in worst case scenario, you have to take it down. And so obviously we recommended to him not to proceed further in case that did have to happen. You know, obviously that's a big expense if you have to take it down.
Okay, Lupe, do you know, I mean, I'm not sure how old this house is, but what is the history on, the ordinance related to setbacks and how it relates to when this house was built and the angle that it's at? Because according to the diagrams, it's not, I mean, it's already.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an important note. So this particular subdivision, Jones Street, there's an old map hanging upstairs, and this subdivision goes back to, I think it's the late 1800s. Obviously, the current zoning rules that we have in place today were not in effect when the subdivision was constructed. So I don't really know exactly what year this house was built, but you're correct. It's already encroaching within the required setbacks, as many other homes are in the area. And I was talking to Paul earlier on the phone today, and if you have a brand new subdivision with our current zoning rules, it's going to be a perfect fit every time, because it's, you know, most subdivisions are, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but they're going to be built exactly to the building setback lines. But when you overlay our current zoning rules to the older parts of town, it's difficult because you have a lot of conflict. And so even like here on this house, you know, a significant corner of the house is already encroaching within that 25-foot buffer, which is that line shown here. So the carport does encroach further within that 25-foot front. You know, it takes it all the way to basically the edge of it. So, you know, it roughly encroaches, you know, 5, 6, 7 feet further out. But there is already an encroachment.
You said this is prevalent with the majority of the neighborhood already?
So, I mean, I didn't actually go out and look at every single property, but just by looking at an aerial map, you can see that there's a lot of homes that were oriented differently, closer to the property, garages within the area, and that's the case for most of this older part of town. The current zoning rules just don't fit perfectly with every single property.
So in terms of getting feedback from your notices,
Yes, I think when I finalized the agenda, I know I have in here a public input summary. At that time, when I finalized the agenda, I hadn't received any feedback. I did get a few calls last week and emails. One of the concerns raised, of course, and I'm sure all of y'all noticed when y'all drove by, is, I mean, the structure's already there. So, you know, there's obviously a little bit of concern about, you know, you're basically asking for forgiveness instead of permission. You know, we try our best to inform residents if, hey, these are all the things that you require permits for. In this instance, that was missed, or they were unaware that a permit was needed for this addition of a carport. So, in a perfect world, you know, we want everyone to come and ask for permission beforehand, but this is just one of the many, I guess, options they had, and they chose to go this route first before another option can be done. So, that was one, the asking for forgiveness. And then just the development, you know, this particular neighborhood and part of town, it's big lots. There's a lot of yard space. You know, there was a concern about, okay, you know, we continue to allow more construction in this neighborhood. How much green space is going to be left instead of, you know, you add additions, you add carports, you know, bigger home remodels. Eventually, that yard space maybe will get diminished. That yard space feel. So, I mean, those are really the two biggest ones that I heard throughout the week.
okay. Is there anybody here from the public that wanted to speak?
I'll speak, Connie.
Okay. And you know the drill. Name and address.
For y'all who don't know me, I'm Betsy Leonard, and I live on McNair Street, the corner of Kettler and McNair. I spoke to Lupe. He was very kind to call me when he was on a trip somewhere. I wanted to tell you first on the history of the house, and I don't know if you all know, but I was told that Mr. Rotello brought in 3 houses from the country when they got that lot. Have you heard that, Lupe? That there's actually 3 houses, kind of shotgun houses that he brought in from their ranch out toward Welborn, Milliken. and put them on that lot. And I don't know, I could maybe find out when, but they bricked over it and made the house that we've known for almost 50 years. So that was just kind of an interesting history to that particular house. Also heard the concern over the two-story building built in the back, a mother-in-law house. And I bring it up right now because if the owner of the house only uses it for mother-in-law, I understand that's okay, but if it becomes a rental, it needs to be public right now whether that's allowed or not to build a two-story in the back and then make it a rental. And I don't know the ordinance, haven't read it, but that was one of the concerns that was brought to me. A lot of people are concerned about, well, we complain but nothing ever gets done, or we say something and, like you say, it gets overlooked. So those were the complaints that I have heard. Nobody is really against the carport per se. It's more the way it has been handled. And Loopy knows all that.
Yes, ma'am. In terms of the mother-in-law, you are correct. So you could have a mother-in-law suite, but the person living in that has to be a direct familial relationship with the primary house. And that's the way the ordinance reads, to prevent, like a rental Airbnb type setup. At least that's how it's currently read. I know we're coming up with we're hopefully going to get a comp plan redone, and it's going to change the zoning ordinance and update it, I should say. So, maybe some of those things will be addressed directly.
Yeah, and you and I talked about the overbuilding on these lots. Mm-hmm. People are going to come in and update these houses, and the ordinance needs to be more specific on overbuilding on these older lots. Thank you all for doing this.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Lupe, who did you say here's representing the owner?
Marissa, the project designer, and Tanya, she's helping out on the project as well.
Okay. Would y'all like to come explain the project or give us a little more information?
Hi there. I'm Marissa. I'm one of the designers on the project.
Okay. What's your last name?
Buckner, Buckner.
Okay.
And my name is Tanya Condon, and I just organized all the staff.
She helps with the accounting and coordinating subs.
Okay.
So we purchased this house. When we first purchased it, it was kind of bare to the bones. It was already to the studs. The exterior was kind of really dilapidated. It was a little confusing on what was the plan for this home. I did not personally meet the previous owner or the person that was working on remodeling the house. Mm-hmm. I do appreciate hearing some of the history on this home. It's always interesting to find that out, especially with an older neighborhood, trying to keep its character that exists. I think once we've come in, we've tried to work with what the market is looking for, but most importantly, kind of fixing the remodeling that was planned for it by the previous owner, I think. And so we updated it, we finished out the interior and refreshed the exterior. And that's kind of just what we've had plans for and what we've been planning to doing. We do not have the intention of finishing out the rear of the house to be an Airbnb. I can understand the concern, and I think that'll just be left up to the owner of the house and to, be aware of zoning. And so I think today and with this meeting, we have personally learned a lesson for remodels for us. It's something that we would like to continue to do in Navasota. And so we're appreciative to have this lesson and grace and just kind of move forward and with whatever decision y'all decide. And we'll keep that in mind for the next project. And now that we have the opportunity, or me working with Lupe, I have a contact that I can ask questions to.
Was the carport in the original design plans of the
No.
remodel?
So that's actually a good question. I'm sorry I didn't touch on that. So the carport was kind of in and out as an idea, mostly because budget. Always, of course, when you're remodeling, it's a concern. And so there wasn't a carport or garage on site, and that's pretty important for homeowners. And so it was really just an in and out concept. We heard from our lead project manager what we would like to have as a carport. A garage was never an option because the tight space that was there. So we always considered a carport, and we developed a design, if we were going to have a carport, this is what it would be. And so it was really touch and go on whether we were going to do it or not. And so it moved really fast, the project, when it was like, okay, I think we might have a proposed owner, let's build the carport. And we didn't go back and check and just make sure how it fits on the site and double check that. And so we were lucky enough to have it built within the property lines, property limits, the boundaries. But unfortunately, had we checked, we would have discovered, the setbacks, which are tricky, but it's still something that we would have liked to bring to your attention and submitted before construction, especially with the risk of our reputation within Navasota and the risk of having to tear it down. But is there any other questions that we could take, or?
So the design to go ahead and do the carport was driven based off of the proposed new owner? They said that they would like it, and that's the reason why you guys started including it?
No, it's more of a seller, like an ideal for a seller, rather than the carport, or an owner saying, I would like to have a carport. Like I said, budget is always a concern in remodeling, and so it was just a touch and go. I think we more so were excited to have somebody even interested early on, and so that kind of gave us motivation, like ideally what would we think someone, if they were to purchase this house, what would they want to complete this property for them.
Now, I was kind of confused about what Betsy said about 3 different properties. Because I was concerned about the carport, and not being from here, I didn't know if the part that juts out up there, if that was added on. And I found on the GIS a picture of the house back in 2012, and that part was originally a garage. But it all looked like one house. I mean, it was, so I don't understand about 3 houses being brought in. Do you know anything about that? Or 3 brought in and pieced together?
So it was very interesting for her to mention that, because I could kind of see how that could, like, when we took on this project, like I said, the previous person, owner, or whoever was remodeling it, it was in the process of being remodeled. It was down to the studs. The exterior was kind of, how do I say it, some stone and some not, and not all the way walled in. So looking back, I can see where the portion that is nearest to the carport could have been a garage, judging by the concrete. We had to do a lot of adjustments to the foundation with the existing floor joists to make sure it was leveled with the concrete foundation. And so I can see how that could have been a separate portion from, or an addition to the house at some point in the previous years. But when we received the home, it was already, walls were already put up in that portion of the building. But very interesting to hear. It's just when we had accumulated that property, it was already, the floor plan, we just had to make sure the foundation and the walls and framing were all up to code, and then we just kind of finished it off. So we didn't really get the opportunity to play with the floor plan layout.
Okay. Because I was thinking if that was an add-on, then there would have been if it had been added on, then there would have been room to have moved the carport back. But and I think I may have said 2012 a while ago, I didn't mean that. It was a GIS photo from 2022, I believe. And it was still red brick. Was it always red brick, Betsy? Okay. And you could tell that that was the garage where you'd come in from the side. And so I thought, okay, I get it now. That wasn't an add-on.
Yes.
So,
What's the square footage on the house?
The square footage is almost 3,700.
Wow.
So it ended up being a big, good-sized property. And I think, like, you can tell back on that photo, if you don't mind going to where the carport's located.
Too far.
So if you see where there's like all that wood piled up, that looks like a garage door.
yeah.
And when we arrived to that project, the previous owner already had a bedroom walled up there, the mudroom walled up there, the master bath walled up there. It was already framed out
Right.
and plumbed out and had electricity or electrical wiring to it. And so we went with that. And that's kind of how the remodel process went for us. So like I said, all we did was with the main house is complete those exterior walls to close that, and we adjusted framing of the foundation so that it was leveled, and we added the sheetrock and relocated plumbing and electrical as needed.
Loopy, I got a question about this picture here. With the driveway already being installed, and that's an old driveway, that isn't anything that they did, would that go ahead and already say that the city approved the setback since they allowed concrete to be poured there already?
So, I mean, I guess depending on who you're asking, but the main thing is the zoning setbacks don't really apply to flat work. So, driveways, sidewalks, walkways up to the house, those aren't taken into consideration when you're looking at the building setback line. So, just because a driveway is poured there doesn't necessarily mean that anything could be built on top, because the building setback line, the 25-foot buffer, only applies to structures, not any flat work, including driveways. So, that really wasn't an issue.
Okay.
On the driveway part, is there enough for a car to park without being out in the street, sticking out in the street?
I believe so, yeah. I think on the diagram it shows two cars parked under the carport, and they're completely out of the right-of-way, inside the property line, and out of the street.
I noticed that the shed on the other side of the fence is...
Further.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably been there a long time. Yeah, that's definitely right on the property line, or maybe a little over.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or want to make any comments? Do y'all have any more questions? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:23.
Okay.
Okay, item number 5, consideration and possible action on order number 4-2023, approving a zoning variance request submitted to the City of Navasota by MKV Properties LLC for the property located along 303 North Jones Avenue in Navasota, Grimes County, Texas, 77868. Parcel ID R26380. The variance request to construct a carport addition encroaching within the 25-foot front setback and side setback requirements as prescribed in Article 6, R-1B, medium density, single dwelling unit, quarter-acre residential district. The property affected is legally described as McNair, Block 10, Lot 910, 8S/2.
Move for a motion? Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve from Paul
I'll second.
and a second from Mr. Hammy. And just, I guess for the record, I guess we need to announce that we have to have a unanimous vote in order for it to pass.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none, so motion carries. Okay, item number 6, conduct a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment and testimony regarding a zoning variance request submitted to the City of Navasota by BSR Properties 7 LLC for the property located along the Roosevelt Street right-of-way in Navasota, Grimes County, Texas 77868, parcel ID R30460. The variance request to construct 2 single-family homes encroaching within the 15-foot street side setback requirements on lots 1 and 12 as prescribed in Article 9, R-3, High-Density Multiple Dwelling Unit Residential District. The property affected is legally described as Washington Park, Block J, Lot 1-12, and we'll open the public hearing at 6:26.
Madam Chairman, Zoning Board of Adjustment, just to briefly summarize, staff's been working with BSR Properties on this particular project. They're proposing to extend the Roosevelt Street 1 block west from Willie Street to Wright Street. So we're actually working with them on the public infrastructure side of the project right now on getting all of their streets, utilities, and infrastructure reviewed, at least the drawings. If y'all driven over there, they've since cleared the property, getting ready to move forward on that. This particular block, Block J, it's already platted. It's already in the county record that way. If you look on the GIS map and even on the appraisal district map, it just shows up as one giant rectangle, but it's actually 12 individual lots. Well, the lots on each corner, they're 40-foot wide. And that just, once you apply the current applicable rules for setbacks, it only leaves an 18-foot buildable wide pad site. So the request is to allow for 5-foot side setbacks on each side, only for the corner lots, which is Lot 1 and Lot 12, to allow for a up to 30-foot pad site. I spoke with our fire chief earlier today and other staff throughout this process, and if ever Willie Street is extended south at that corner, the paved road would still be quite a bit of distance, well over 20 feet from the edge of the home. So we don't foresee any issues in terms of distance from the road. And then most, if not all, utilities are going to run along Roosevelt Street. So Kirk Lowe with FSC Engineering is here on this project as well if y'all have any questions. But it's basically the same exact thing for Lot 1 and Lot 12.
Okay, so I've got a question for you, because I've been over there. So the street that'll be put through is just going to go straight. It's just going to extend Roosevelt all the way down to Wright Street. Okay.
And then turn and connect to where the pavement ends on Wright Street.
Okay.
So it'll make an L, basically.
Okay.
And that, like I said, that's something that we're working with them on, and they graciously agreed to make the connection so it wouldn't just be a dead-end street.
And so the city and the company are working together for that, or is that something the company's doing on their own?
The company's doing it completely out of their pocket, the whole thing. We're just reviewing the drawings. So when I say we're working with them, we're just trying to make sure all the design is to our codes.
Okay.
And I talked to Chief Katkowski today myself, and he compared them to, like in Dove Crossing, just more or less a smaller front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And he did say that the houses would be hardy plank, which are fire resistant, because that was one of my concerns was, them being closer together. So he didn't have a problem with that. I'm sorry,
My name is Kirk Lowe.
Okay.
I'm with FSC. I'm the engineer on the project. Also with me is Mr. Brett Rowley. He's the owner of BSR Properties, and he's the one putting this project
Okay.
together. As Luby said, he covered pretty much everything that we have as far as our lot sizes. We have 12 lots, 10 of them are 50-foot wide lots, and then the 2 side lots are both 40. So it just makes it really difficult to put a house on there. One, I'm not even sure if we could do an 18-foot house. And if we were able to, I guess, the one thing that we definitely wouldn't be able to do is put a garage on there. And so that just promotes more street parking as well. So, I mean, we do have a house plan that we attached on here. I think it's 29 foot,
Right.
6 inches. And it basically has a one-car garage that's attached with it. So that would at least be the minimum. And then, you know, hopefully the bigger lots, we do larger houses than that, possibly.
So with it being a one-car garage, if there's another car that parks in the driveway, will it, I mean, first of all, well, it'll have to have sidewalks, right? When it goes to planning and zoning, they're gonna be looking for sidewalks?
So this particular project is kind of unique in the sense that the subdivision is already platted.
Okay.
So really, we're only dealing with the public infrastructure. So that's one of the comments that'll be raised by our internal review engineer, if that's the case, depending on how the ordinance reads. Because it's a unique situation because the subdivision was all, you know, it's already platted. It was just never developed. So.
So is there a room for a car?
Oh, yeah. Because the 25-foot setback is still being met. It's just the side that's the problem.
And then the street is actually 31 foot with curb and gutter.
Okay.
And, you know, right now, if you're on Roosevelt Street, there are vehicles that are parked, actually on Google Earth, you can see them, they're parked on the street. So, and there's still room for a road there, or for a driveway.
Okay, I thought I thought there was.
Yeah, I thought there was
yeah.
a front setback
Yeah.
issue too that we were gonna talk about. So it's only the side
Just the
setback.
Yeah, this item is
Okay.
just the side.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So are they similar to the houses that are already existing along, on Roosevelt? And,
I believe so, yeah.
okay, those are nice.
Yeah, I think those are a one-car garage, too. Yep, that's a one-car garage.
Is part of the infrastructure is gonna be put in fire hydrants as well?
Yeah, yes.
We have one fire hydrant. I know we are looping the water from Willie going all the way up to West Virginia Street. We're also looping the gas. There's gas right at the corner of Willie and Roosevelt, and we're basically gonna, there's a gas line that's behind the drainage ditch behind, and I think that's where we're gonna connect the gas line in to loop that. Sanitary sewer line is extending from Willie Street right at the intersection there. There's a manhole that we're tying into. And then actually we are providing services for the north side of the road. Even though we don't actually own those pieces of property, we are at least putting the infrastructure in there for those if somebody else, you know, I think we would like for our neighbors to possibly, if it's their lot, to pay for that, but I mean, we're going to provide that either way. Just so that if those ever were developed, you wouldn't have to go rip the road up.
How did y'all decide on Navasota?
I'll let Brett speak to that.
Brett Rowley. Navasota's, we typically focus in communities like this that are sort of up and coming. I'm from Needville, and so we focus in there. Wharton, Eagle Lake, East Bernard, places like that. So we picked here because the infrastructure exists on the street. Somebody had previously platted it, I don't know how many years ago. And so it was an easy fit. Continue the street out, put the infrastructure in, build out. As a matter of fact, since we started this process, we secured the additional acre where the road would stop on
Roosevelt?
Roosevelt,
Yeah, to keep
where
continuing.
the L would be. We secured that additional acre. So at some point, assuming this all gets built and sold, we'll be back for those additional, I think it's 11 lots there as well.
And I haven't pulled that plat. I don't know if we'll run into the same issue with the side setbacks or not, but
Don't know.
they haven't set me loose on that one yet.
There's 3 floor plans. They're all 3-bedroom, 2-bath, between 1,300 and 1,500 square feet, all hardy plank with rock or brick accent on the fronts.
And what did you say that distance is from the side of the house to the street?
So from the right-of-way to the setback is what we're asking is for 5 foot. right now, the Willie Street, I guess, does have, I'm not sure what
Yeah,
the
it
width
has-
on that.
it's-
It's a little smaller road. Neither one of them are as wide as Roosevelt.
Right.
Wright Street is actually kind of one lane
Right.
that we're connecting
Yeah.
into. It looks like there's base there for a future lane, possibly. And then Willie Street is open ditches, there's no curb.
Yeah, there's no pavement on this side, so
Yes.
I think if the road would be widened enough, you'd probably be about 15 feet from the edge of pavement to the wall of the house, depending on how wide this right of way is, which I can.
We've had a number of residents requesting affordable homes in that area. Is there anybody out in the audience that wanted to make a public comment or ask a question while the public hearing's still? If there are no other questions, I guess I'll go ahead and close it at 6:36.
There you go.
Supposed to be here. Okay, item number 7, consideration and possible action on order number 5-2023, approving a zoning variance request submitted to the City of Navasota by BSR Properties 7 LLC for the property located along the Roosevelt Street right-of-way in Navasota, Grimes County, Texas, 77868, parcel ID R30460. The variance request to construct 2 single-family homes encroaching within the 15 feet street side setback requirements on lots 1 and 12 as prescribed in Article 9, R3, high-density multi-dwelling unit residential district. The property affected is legally described as Washington Park, Block J, Lot 1 and 12.
We'll move forward with the motion.
Okay.
A motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Paul to approve. I'll second. Any discussion? There's no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none, so motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 8, consideration and possible action on approval of the August 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes as presented. I move we approve the minutes.
I second.
We have a motion by myself, seconded by Paul. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And we're